The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across Ryder Blackwood's ranch as he trudged toward the barn, his boots heavy with mud and his heart heavier with loneliness. 3 years since his parents' passing had left the 28-year-old with nothing but 800 acres of Montana territory, and an emptiness no amount of hard work could fill. He hadn't expected to find anything but his horses waiting in the weathered structure, certainly not a woman in a torn dress fast asleep on a bed of hay. The year was 1883, and Ryder's portion of Montana territory was as wild as the mustangs that roamed the nearby hills. His ranch sat nestled in a valley with mountains rising majestically in the distance, a place where a man could carve out a living if he wasn't afraid of backbreaking work and solitude. Lately, the solitude had been eating at him more than the labor. Ryder stood frozen in the doorway of the barn, lantern held high, studying the sleeping woman. Her honey-blonde hair spilled across the hay, and despite the dirt on her face, he could see she was beautiful. Beside her lay a small leather trunk with a tag that read, "Oh, Montgomery, mail-order bride." "What in tarnation?" Ryder muttered, stepping closer. The woman stirred at the sound of his voice, her eyes fluttering open startling blue like the Montana sky in summer. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the barn wall. "Stay back," she warned, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear in her eyes. Ryder set the lantern down and raised his hands. "Madam, I mean you no harm. This is my barn you're sleeping in." The woman glanced around, seemed to take in her surroundings for the first time. "Your barn." "Then you must be." She reached into a pocket and pulled out a crumpled letter. "Mr. Richard Thornton," Ryder frowned. "No, madam, I'm Ryder Blackwood. This is the Blackwood Ranch. There's no Thornton for 20 miles. Her face fell, a flash of panic crossing her features before she composed herself. "I see. I've made a terrible mistake." She stood, brushing hay from her dress. "My name is Olivia Montgomery. I was meant to meet my future husband, but it seems I've arrived at the wrong ranch." "In my barn in the middle of the night?" Ryder asked skeptically. Olivia's chin lifted. "I arrived at the station in Copper Creek yesterday. The stagecoach driver pointed me in this direction, but I got lost. It was growing dark, I was tired, and your barn seemed safer than sleeping under the stars with wolves about. Something didn't add up, but Ryder couldn't leave a woman alone in his barn for the night. Well, Miss Montgomery, you're welcome to stay in the house. I've got a spare room. In the morning, I can take you to Thornton's place." "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose. It's no imposition. Can't have a lady sleeping in a barn when there's a proper bed available." Reluctance showed in every line of her body, but she nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." Ryder helped carry her trunk to the house, a sturdy 2-story structure his father had built with his own hands. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid and warm. He showed Olivia to the spare room, then retreated to the kitchen to make coffee, his mind racing with questions. A mail-order bride lost on his property was strange enough, but something in her eyes spoke of deeper troubles. She moved like someone expecting danger at every turn. Ryder had seen that look before, in wild horses when they'd been mistreated. He was pouring coffee when Olivia appeared in the doorway, her dress changed for a simpler one, her face washed clean. "Coffee," he offered. "Thank you." She accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his. "I apologize for the intrusion, Mr. Blackwood." "Ryder," he corrected, "and no apology needed. It's not often I get visitors out here. Do you run this ranch alone?" "Got 3 hands who help with the cattle, but they bunk in the bunkhouse near the north pasture. Been on my own in the house since my parents died." Sympathy softened her features. "I'm sorry for your loss." Ryder shrugged, uncomfortable with the personal turn of the conversation. "It's been 3 years, I get by." He studied her over his coffee cup. "So you came all the way out here to marry a man you've never met?" Olivia's gaze dropped to her cup. "It's not uncommon," I answered an advertisement. "We exchanged letters for 6 months. Mr. Thornton seemed kind. He is," Ryder conceded. "Known him most of my life. Good rancher, keeps to himself mostly." Relief visibly washed over her. "That's reassuring." They sat in silence for a moment before Ryder asked, "Where are you from, Miss Montgomery?" "Boston," she answered quickly, too quickly. "And please call me Olivia. Boston's a long way from Montana territory." I was seeking a change. Her tone made it clear she didn't want to elaborate. Ryder didn't push. Everyone in the West had a past they'd rather not discuss. He'd learned long ago not to pry into another person's business. Well, you'll get plenty of change out here, he said instead. Winters are harsh, summer's hot. Takes a special kind of woman to thrive in these parts. I'm stronger than I look, Mr. Blackwood Ryder. A flash of steel shone in her eyes. I don't doubt it. And strangely, he didn't. Despite her fine manners and delicate appearance, there was something resilient about Olivia Montgomery. After finishing their coffee, Ryder showed her where to find extra blankets, then retired to his own room. Sleep eluded him as he thought about the mysterious woman under his roof. Something about her story didn't sit right, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Morning came with golden light streaming through the curtains. Ryder rose early, as was his habit, and was surprised to find Olivia already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Hope you don't mind, she said, nodding toward the stove where bacon sizzled. Seemed the least I could do after your hospitality. Not at all. Ryder sat at the table, watching her move efficiently around his kitchen. Sleep well. Better than I have in weeks, she admitted. Your home is very peaceful. They ate breakfast together, making small talk about the ranch and the territory. Olivia was well-spoken and knowledgeable, asking intelligent questions about ranching that suggested she'd done her research before coming west. Ryder was just about to suggest they head to Thornton's place when hoofbeats sounded outside. Multiple horses approaching fast. Olivia froze, her face draining of color. Are you expecting company? No, Ryder said, rising from his chair and moving to the window. 3 riders were approaching, hard-faced men with guns visible at their hips. They didn't look like the law, and they certainly weren't neighbors coming for a social call. Olivia, he said quietly, do you know who those men might be? Her eyes met his, filled with fear and regret. I'm so sorry, Ryder. It's my past catching up with me. Before he could ask what she meant, the men were dismounting. Ryder grabbed his rifle from above the door. Stay inside, he ordered, stepping onto the porch to meet the unwelcome visitors. The leader of the trio, a tall man with a scar running down his right cheek, stepped forward. Morning, he called, his friendly tone belied by the cold look in his eyes. Name's Ross Jenkins. I'm looking for a woman might have passed this way, blonde, pretty, traveling alone. Can't help you, Ryder replied evenly, his rifle not quite pointed at the men but ready all the same. Haven't seen anyone fitting that description. Jenkins smiled, revealing a gold tooth. Now that's funny, because my associates and I tracked her all the way from the station in Copper Creek. Trail leads right to your property. His hand rested casually on his gun. Mind if we take a look around? Actually, I do mind. This is private property. We've got business with the lady, Jenkins said, dropping all pretense of friendliness. Her name's Olivia Harrington, and she stole something valuable from my employer. Step aside, cowboy. This doesn't concern you. Harrington. Ryder kept his expression neutral, though his mind was racing. Don't know any Harringtons, and I'll decide what concerns me on my own land. The 3 men spread out slightly, a tactical move that didn't escape Ryder's notice. His finger tightened on the trigger. The tense standoff was broken by the sound of the door opening behind him. That's enough, Olivia's voice rang out. I'm the one you want. Leave Mr. Blackwood out of this. Ryder glanced back to see Olivia standing in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Jenkins grinned. Miss Harrington, how nice to see you again. Mr. Sullivan sends his regards. I'm sure he does, she replied coldly. Tell him he can have his ledger back. I've made copies of the relevant pages. Now, see, that's not how this works. Jenkins took a step forward. Mr. Sullivan wants both the ledger and the person who took it. Seems he'd like to make an example of you. Ryder moved to block Jenkins' path. The lady's not going anywhere with you. Ryder, please, Olivia pleaded. These men are dangerous. Don't get involved. Too late for that, Jenkins said. Your boyfriend here's already involved. Question is whether he's going to be smart about it. I'm smart enough to know 3 against 1 are poor odds, Ryder admitted. But I'm also smart enough to know my land. Those hills behind you are crawling with my ranch hands, all armed and wondering why strangers are threatening their boss. It was a bluff his hands were miles away working the north pasture, but Jenkins' eyes flickered to the hills, uncertainty crossing his face. "You're lying," he decided, but there was a note of doubt in his voice. "Want to bet your life on it?" Ryder challenged. A tense silence fell. Then Jenkins spat on the ground. "This isn't over. Mr. Sullivan doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive." He backed toward his horse. "We'll be watching. You can't stay holed up here forever." The three men mounted their horses and rode away, but not before Jenkins called back, "See you soon, Olivia." When they were out of sight, Ryder turned to Olivia, who had sunk onto the porch steps, her head in her hands. "I think you'd better tell me what's going on," he said, keeping his voice gentle despite his confusion and anger. "Starting with your real name." Olivia looked up, her blue eyes filled with tears. "It is Olivia Montgomery Harrington. Everything I told you was true, except..." She took a deep breath. "I didn't come west just to be a bride. I came to escape a powerful man who wants me dead." Ryder sat beside her on the steps, setting his rifle aside but keeping it within reach. "I'm listening. I worked as a secretary for Edward Sullivan, one of Boston's wealthiest businessmen. Everyone thinks he made his fortune in shipping and railroads, but his real business is corruption. Bribing officials, blackmail, even murder." Olivia's hands twisted in her lap. "I discovered a ledger in his office records of all his illegal dealings, names of the people he's paid off or threatened. I couldn't just ignore it, not when I realized he'd been responsible for the death of a young woman who had threatened to expose him." "So you took the ledger and ran," Ryder guessed. Olivia nodded. "I made copies of the most damning pages first, sent them to a trusted friend at a newspaper. Then I fled. I knew he'd send men after me, so I came up with the mail-order bride plan. Changed my name back to my mother's maiden name, Montgomery, and arranged to marry Mr. Thornton." "Why Thornton?" His advertisement said he lived in an isolated area. "I thought I'd be safe here, at least long enough to figure out my next move." She looked at him pleadingly. "I never meant to involve you in my troubles, Ryder. I'll leave immediately. And go where? Those men are probably watching the roads. I can't stay here." "You saw what kind of men Sullivan employs. They won't hesitate to kill you to get to me." Ryder stood, pacing the porch as he thought. "They don't know the territory like I do, and they're not expecting resistance." He stopped, facing her. "I think you should stay, at least until we can come up with a better plan." "Why would you risk your life for a stranger who's lied to you?" Ryder wasn't entirely sure himself. Maybe it was the loneliness of the past 3 years making him reckless. Or maybe it was something about Olivia herself, her courage in standing up to a powerful man, the determination in her eyes even when she was afraid. "Let's just say I don't like bullies," he said finally. "And I don't like men who threaten women on my property." Relief and gratitude flooded her face. "Thank you, but we need a plan. Sullivan won't give up. The information I have could ruin him. First things first, we need to warn my hands about possible trouble, then secure the property." Ryder picked up his rifle. "And we need to get word to Thornton that you won't be arriving as planned." Olivia followed him inside. "Will your men help protect a stranger? They're loyal to me, and I pay them well." Ryder began gathering supplies. "But before we do anything else, I need to see this ledger that's worth killing for." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "It's hidden in my trunk." She led him to her room and opened the trunk, carefully removing false bottom to reveal a black leather-bound book. "This is it. 3 years of Sullivan's crimes, all meticulously recorded." Ryder flipped through the pages, his expression darkening as he read. Names of judges, politicians, details of bribes, even notes about accidents arranged for people who crossed Sullivan. "This man's reach goes far beyond Boston," he said grimly. "There are names here connected to the territorial government. That's why he's so desperate to get it back, and to silence me." Ryder closed the book. "We'll keep you safe, Olivia, I promise you that." She studied his face. "Why are you really helping me? You don't know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you risked everything to expose a corrupt man. That tells me all I need to know about your character." A flush spread across her cheeks. "I've put you in terrible danger." "Danger's part of life out here," Ryder replied with a slight smile. "Now let's get to work. Those men will be back, and next time they'll bring reinforcements." The rest of the day passed in a flurry of activity. Ryder rode out to the north pasture to warn his ranch hands 3 tough, weathered men named Hank, Diego, and Tom. They listened silently as he explained the situation, leaving out certain details but making it clear that armed men might come looking for trouble. "So you're harboring a fugitive?" Hank asked, his leathery face creased with concern. "I'm protecting a woman who exposed a criminal," Ryder corrected. "She hasn't broken any laws." The men exchanged glances, then Diego shrugged. "Your ranch, your rules, boss, we're with you." They returned to the main house, bringing extra ammunition and supplies to prepare for a potential siege. Ryder sent Tom to Copper Creek with a message for the sheriff and another for Richard Thornton, explaining in vague terms that his mail-order bride had encountered difficulties and wouldn't be arriving. As the sun began to set, Ryder and Olivia sat on the porch, watching the golden light fade from the mountains. The ranch hands were positioned strategically around the property, keeping watch. "I've been thinking," Olivia said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "The ledger is what Sullivan wants most. If we could get it to the right authorities, federal marshals, perhaps he'd have no reason to come after me." "Except revenge," Ryder pointed out. "Men like Sullivan don't forgive people who cross them." "True," she sighed. "I'm sorry for bringing this chaos into your life." "My life was too quiet anyway," Ryder replied with a slight smile. "Besides, I'd rather face Sullivan's men than watch you ride away to face them alone." Olivia studied him curiously. "You barely know me. I'm a good judge of character." "Had to be growing up out here." He turned to face her. "Why did you really take that ledger, Olivia? The truth." She was quiet for a long moment. "Sullivan killed my friend," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Catherine worked as a maid in his house. She overheard something she shouldn't have, and a week later she was found dead. Everyone said it was an accident, but I knew better." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I couldn't let him get away with it, not when I had access to evidence of his crimes." Ryder's hand covered hers. "I'm sorry about your friend. She was the only family I had left." Olivia blinked back tears. "My parents died when I was young. I was raised by my aunt, but she passed away 2 years ago. Catherine was like a sister to me. Now I understand why you risked everything." Ryder squeezed her hand gently. "You're a brave woman, Olivia Harrington." She gave him a tremulous smile. "I don't feel brave. Most days I feel terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it." Their conversation was interrupted by Hank approaching from the darkness. "Ryder coming, boss, just one from the direction of town." Ryder stood, grabbing his rifle. "Stay inside," he told Olivia. "No," she countered, rising beside him. "I'm tired of hiding." Together they waited as the rider approached. In the moonlight, they could make out the figure of Tom, Ryder's ranch hand, returning from Copper Creek. "Sheriff's not in town," Tom reported as he dismounted. "Deputy said he's gone to Helena for a trial, won't be back for a week." He handed Ryder a sealed envelope. "This is from Thornton." Ryder broke the seal and read the brief note inside. "Thornton says he understands the situation and offers his assistance if needed." He glanced at Olivia. "Seems he's a gentleman." "Yes," she agreed softly. "I believe he would have been a good husband." Something about her tone made Ryder frown, but he pushed the feeling aside. "Any sign of Sullivan's men in town?" he asked Tom. The 3 from this morning were at the saloon, asking questions, and there was talk of more men arriving on tomorrow's stage from Helena. "So they're bringing reinforcements," Ryder muttered. "We need to be ready." They spent the evening fortifying the house, moving furniture to block windows, stockpiling water and ammunition. As midnight approached, Ryder insisted Olivia get some rest while he took the first watch. "I'll wake you if anything happens," he promised. Reluctantly, she retired to her room, though Ryder doubted she would sleep much. He settled into a chair by the window, rifle across his lap, watching the moonlit landscape for any sign of movement. Hours passed in silence. The only sounds were the occasional hoot of an owl or the distant howl of a wolf. Just before dawn, soft footsteps alerted him to Olivia's presence. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "No." She sat in the chair beside him. "I kept thinking about what happens next. Even if we survive this, Sullivan won't stop looking for me." "One problem at a time," Ryder said. First, we deal with the immediate threat, then we figure out how to get your evidence to someone who can use it against Sullivan. And then what? There was a vulnerability in her voice that made him turn to look at her. Where do I go? What life can I build when such a powerful man wants me dead? You could stay here, Ryder suggested before he could stop himself. Montana Territory's a big place. Easy for a person to disappear, start fresh. Surprise flickered across her face. Here, as what? Ryder's heart hammered in his chest. He'd spoken impulsively, but now that the words were out, he realized he meant them. As whatever you want to be, this land has a way of accepting people for who they are now, not who they were before. Olivia's expression softened. That's a lovely thought. Whatever she might have said next was lost as Diego's warning whistle cut through the pre-dawn stillness. Ryder was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. Ryder's coming, he said grimly. At least 6 of them. Olivia stood beside him, peering into the gray light of early morning. It's Jenkins, she confirmed as the Ryders drew closer, and he's brought friends. Ryder's ranch hands had taken positions around the property as planned. Tom was in the barn with a clear view of the approaching Ryders. Hank was concealed behind a water trough near the house, and Diego was positioned on the small rise behind the house with a rifle. Stay inside, Ryder told Olivia as he stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Jenkins and his men stopped about 50 yards from the house. This time they made no pretense of friendliness. Blackwood, Jenkins called. Send out the woman in the ledger and we'll leave your ranch standing. Not going to happen, Jenkins, Ryder called back. Turn around and ride out while you still can, Jenkins laughed. You're outnumbered, Cowboy. Don't be a fool. I count 6 of you, Ryder replied calmly. I've got 4 guns, all held by men who know this land better than you ever will. Those aren't odds I'd bet against. For emphasis, Diego fired a shot from his position on the rise, the bullet kicking up dirt just in front of Jenkins' horse. The animal reared, nearly unseating its rider. That was a warning, Ryder called. Next one won't be. Jenkins steadied his horse, his face contorted with rage. Sullivan's offering $500 for the woman, dead or alive. $1,000 for the ledger. How much is she paying you to die for her? This isn't about money. Everything's about money, Jenkins spat. You think she cares about you. She's using you same as she used Sullivan. Ryder's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance to leave peacefully. Jenkins looked at his men, then back at Ryder. For a moment it seemed he might back down, then he drew his gun. Take them. Gunfire erupted from both sides. Ryder ducked behind a porch pillar as bullets splintered the wood around him. He returned fire, hitting one of Jenkins' men in the shoulder. The man fell from his horse, screaming from their hidden positions. Ryder's men opened fire as well. Another of Jenkins' men went down. The remaining 4 dismounted, taking cover behind rocks and trees at the edge of the yard. Olivia, Ryder called over his shoulder. Stay down. No answer came. Ryder risked a glance back into the house and saw with alarm that Olivia was gone. The back door stood open. Damn it, he muttered. Had she fled? Or was she trying to draw the gunmen away from the ranch? A shout from behind the house answered his question. Jenkins, I have what you want. Leave these people alone. Olivia stood on the rise behind the house, the black ledger held high in her hand. Diego, who had been positioned there, was nowhere to be seen. No, Ryder shouted, but his voice was drowned out by Jenkins' triumphant yell. Get her. Jenkins ordered 2 of his men, who broke cover and ran toward the rise. Ryder fired, hitting one in the leg. The man stumbled but kept going. The second reached the base of the rise and started climbing toward Olivia. Then, Diego appeared from behind a boulder, tackling the man. They rolled down the slope, grappling for control of a knife that glinted in the early morning light. Jenkins and his remaining man were still exchanging fire with Ryder, Hank, and Tom. The air was thick with gun smoke and the acrid smell of black powder. Ryder knew he had to reach Olivia before Jenkins' men did. He waited for a break in the gunfire, then sprinted around the side of the house, keeping low. Olivia had disappeared from the ridge. Ryder's heart pounded with fear as he scaled the rocky slope. Had they reached her? Was she hurt? He crested the rise to find Olivia crouched behind a large rock, the ledger clutched to her chest. Relief flooded through him. What were you thinking? He demanded, dropping to a crouch beside her. I couldn't let you die because of me, she replied, her eyes fierce. This is my fight. It's our fight now, Ryder corrected, checking his ammunition. And that was a foolish move. You could have been killed. I had a plan, she insisted. I still do. Look. She pointed to the horizon where a dust cloud was visible. Ryder's coming. I'm guessing that's Thornton. Ryder squinted at the approaching riders. How did you know he'd come? I didn't, but I hoped the message you sent would bring help. The gunfire below had momentarily ceased. Jenkins and his remaining men were regrouping, clearly having spotted the approaching riders as well. We need to get back to the house, Ryder said, taking Olivia's arm. Stay low and follow me. They made their way down the backside of the rise, using the rocks for cover. As they reached the base, Diego appeared, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead but otherwise unharmed. The gringo with the knife won't be causing any more trouble, he reported grimly. They reached the back door of the house just as the new riders thundered into the yard. Ryder pushed Olivia inside, then turned to see Richard Thornton leading a group of 6 armed men. Blackwood, Thornton called. We got your message. Thought you might need a hand. Jenkins and his 2 remaining men found themselves suddenly outnumbered. They exchanged looks, then raised their hands in surrender. This isn't over, Jenkins snarled as Thornton's men disarmed him. Sullivan will send more men. Not if he's in jail, Thornton replied, dismounting. Federal marshal's on his way from Helena. Seems your boss has some explaining to do. Ryder stepped forward to greet Thornton, a tall man in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard. Your timing's perfect. How did you know to bring reinforcements? Your note mentioned trouble with a woman's past catching up to her. Figured it might be serious if you were asking for my understanding about the bride's situation. Thornton glanced toward the house. Speaking of which, where is Miss Montgomery? Before Ryder could answer, Olivia appeared in the doorway. I'm here, Mr. Thornton, and I owe you an apology. Thornton studied her for a moment. No apology needed, madam. Sounds like you've been through enough. One of Thornton's men approached, leading a horse with a body draped over it. Found this one by the rise, dead. Ryder recognized the man Diego had fought with. He glanced at his ranch hand, who shrugged. He pulled a gun, Diego said simply. With Jenkins and his remaining man securely tied, Thornton turned to Ryder. Federal marshal should be here by tomorrow. We'll keep these varmints under guard until then. Thank you, Ryder said, extending his hand. I owe you, Thornton shook it firmly. Neighbors help neighbors out here. It's the only way to survive. He glanced at Olivia again. Though I admit I'm curious about what kind of trouble brings hired guns to a peaceful ranch. It's a long story, Olivia said wearily, but I'm willing to tell it. They gathered in Ryder's house, where Olivia explained everything: her real identity, Sullivan's crimes, and the ledger that documented it all. Thornton and his men listened silently, their expressions growing darker as the tale unfolded. Brave thing you did, Thornton said when she finished. Foolish, maybe, but brave. I had to do something, Olivia replied. I couldn't live with myself otherwise. The important thing now, Ryder interjected, is getting the ledger and Olivia's testimony to the proper authorities. With Jenkins captured, we have evidence of Sullivan's reach even here in Montana territory. Thornton nodded. Marshal Davis is a good man, incorruptible. If anyone can use this evidence to bring Sullivan down, it's him. As the day progressed, they tended to the wounded, both friends and enemies. Jenkins' man, who had been shot in the shoulder, was treated by Olivia, who displayed a surprising knowledge of battlefield medicine. My father was a doctor, she explained as she bandaged the man's wound. He taught me the basics before he died. Ryder watched her work, admiring her composure and compassion even toward men who had tried to kill her. There was a strength to Olivia Harrington that went beyond physical courage, a moral center that wouldn't bend, even when it would be easier to do so. By evening, the immediate danger had passed. Jenkins and his men were secured in Ryder's storage cellar, guarded by Thornton's men. Hank and Diego patrolled the perimeter of the ranch, alert for any sign of additional threats, while Tom rode to Copper Creek to telegraph the federal marshal's office, confirming that they had prisoners in need of transport. Ryder found Olivia sitting alone on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. He sat beside her, offering a cup of coffee. "Thank you," she said, accepting it gratefully, "for everything. You're welcome." He studied her profile in the fading light. "What happens now, after the marshal takes your evidence and testimony?" Olivia sighed. "I don't know. Even if Sullivan is arrested, he has friends in high places. I might never be truly safe in the East." "Then stay here," Ryder suggested, the words coming easily now. "Montana's a good place for a fresh start." She turned to look at him, a question in her eyes. "As what, your housekeeper?" "No," Ryder said, gathering his courage. "I was thinking of something more permanent." Olivia's eyes widened. "Ryder, we barely know each other." "I know," he admitted. "And I'm not asking for an immediate answer. All I'm saying is that I'd like the chance to court you properly, if you're willing." A slow smile spread across her face. "That's quite an offer, Mr. Blackwood." "I'm a simple man, Olivia. I know what I want when I see it." He reached for her hand. "And I've never met a woman like you, brave enough to stand up against evil, compassionate enough to tend to an enemy's wounds, and beautiful enough to take my breath away." A blush colored her cheeks. "You're quite persuasive for a simple man. Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe," she replied, but her smile told him it was more than that. "Let's see what happens when the marshal arrives, one crisis at a time." Ryder nodded, satisfied for now. They sat together in comfortable silence as darkness fell, the stars emerging one by one in the vast Montana sky. The federal marshal, a stern-faced man named Davis, arrived the following afternoon with 4 deputies. He listened to Olivia's story without interruption, examining the ledger with keen interest. "This is exactly what we've been looking for," he said finally. "We've suspected Sullivan's involvement in various crimes for years, but could never prove it. This ledger, combined with your testimony, could put him away for life." "Will I have to return to Boston?" Olivia asked, concern evident in her voice. "Eventually, yes. A trial of this magnitude will require your presence." Marshal Davis studied her. "But not immediately. We'll need to build our case, arrest Sullivan and his accomplices. That could take months." "And in the meantime?" Ryder asked. "In the meantime, Miss Harrington should stay somewhere safe." "Sullivan's reach is long, but it's not infinite. Out here, with people watching over her, she should be secure enough." The marshal glanced between them. "I take it you're offering your protection, Mr. Blackwood." "I am," Ryder confirmed. "Good. I'll leave one of my deputies here for additional security, at least until we have Sullivan in custody." Davis stood, tucking the ledger into his saddlebag. "Miss Harrington, your courage is commendable. The Justice Department won't forget what you've done." After the marshal and his men departed with their prisoners, a sense of relief settled over the ranch. The immediate danger had passed, though Ryder knew they couldn't truly relax until Sullivan was behind bars. Life gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. Thornton and his men returned to their own ranch, though they promised to check in regularly. Marshal Davis' deputy, a quiet man named Wilson, took up residence in the bunkhouse, keeping a watchful eye on the property, and Olivia, true to her word, gave Ryder a chance to court her properly. They spent their days working side by side on the ranch, Olivia proving herself surprisingly adept at learning ranch chores, and their evenings talking by the fire, getting to know each other beyond the crisis that had brought them together. Ryder learned that Olivia was well-educated, with a sharp mind and a quick wit. She could quote Shakespeare and calculate figures in her head faster than he could with pencil and paper. She loved music and missed the concerts she'd attended in Boston, but found equal joy in the natural symphony of the Montana wilderness. Olivia, in turn, discovered that beneath Ryder's taciturn exterior was a thoughtful man who read voraciously, knew the name of every star in the night sky, and treated his horses and cattle with gentle respect. He was strong without being domineering, confident without being arrogant, and kind without expecting recognition for it. As autumn painted the landscape in fiery hues, their friendship deepened into something more. Their first kiss came on a crisp October evening as they walked back from checking the southern pasture. It was gentle and tentative at first, then grew in intensity until they both pulled away, breathless. "I'm falling in love with you, Olivia Harrington," Ryder admitted, his hands framing her face. I know it's fast, and I know our future is uncertain, but I needed you to know. Tears shimmered in her blue eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me. Why? Because I've never had something this precious to lose before. He pulled her close, his arms strong around her. You're not going to lose me, or this place. No matter what happens with Sullivan, we'll face it together. As winter settled over the ranch, bringing snow and bitter cold, Ryder and Olivia's bond only strengthened. They received periodic updates from Marshal Davis. Sullivan had been arrested, the case against him was building, and numerous accomplices had been taken into custody. They're saying it's one of the biggest corruption cases in the country's history, Deputy Wilson reported after receiving a telegram from his superior. Sullivan's trying to buy his way out, but the evidence is too strong. The ledger names too many names. Olivia received the news with mixed emotions. I should feel triumphant, she told Ryder as they lay before the fire one evening. Instead, I just feel relieved that it's almost over. It's natural, he assured her, stroking her hair. You didn't do this for revenge, you did it for justice. Yes, she agreed softly, for Catherine and for all his other victims. In January, the telegram they'd been both expecting and dreading arrived. Olivia was needed in Boston for the trial, which would begin in March. She would need to leave within the week to make the journey east. That night, as snow fell softly outside, Ryder knelt before Olivia in the warmth of the cabin. I know the timing isn't ideal, he said, holding out a simple gold ring that had belonged to his mother. But I can't let you go back east without knowing that you have a home to return to. That you have someone waiting for you. He took a deep breath. Olivia Harrington, will you marry me? Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you, Ryder Blackwood. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. We'll be married before you leave, he decided. So when you face Sullivan in that courtroom, you'll do it as my wife. The wedding was a small, hurried affair in the Copper Creek Church, with Thornton, Ryder's ranch hands, and a few neighbors as witnesses. But what it lacked in grandeur, it made up for in sincerity. Olivia wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, and Ryder wore his best shirt and a new pair of boots. I, Ryder James Blackwood, take thee, Olivia Montgomery Harrington, to be my lawfully wedded wife, he vowed, his voice steady and sure. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Olivia repeated the vows, her voice breaking only once when she promised to love and cherish him all the days of her life. By the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, the preacher pronounced, I now declare you husband and wife. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Their first kiss as husband and wife was sweet and tender, a promise of the life they would build together once Sullivan's shadow no longer loomed over them. 2 days later, Ryder stood on the platform of the Copper Creek station, watching as Olivia prepared to board the eastbound train. Deputy Wilson would accompany her all the way to Boston, ensuring her safety during the journey. It won't be more than a month or two, she promised, her gloved hands clasping his. Once I've testified, I'll come straight back. I'll be waiting, Ryder assured her, trying to ignore the knot of fear in his stomach. And I'll write every day, as will I. She reached up to touch his face. I love you, Ryder Blackwood. I love you, Olivia Blackwood, he replied, savoring the sound of her new name. The train's whistle blew, signaling the final boarding call. Ryder pulled Olivia into one last embrace, kissing her with all the love and longing he felt. Come back to me, he whispered against her lips. Always, she promised. He watched as the train pulled away from the station, carrying his heart with it. The ranch would be empty without her, but he took comfort in knowing it was only temporary. Soon, they would begin their life together properly, without fear or secrets between them. The weeks that followed were the longest of Ryder's life. True to his word, he wrote to Olivia every day, detailing the mundane events of ranch life, sharing his thoughts and dreams for their future. Her letters in return were less frequent due to the demands of the trial preparations, but each one was a treasure he read until the paper was worn at the folds. The trial of Edward Sullivan became national news. Ryder followed it through newspapers that arrived days late in Copper Creek and through occasional telegrams from Olivia. Sullivan had assembled an army of lawyers, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The ledger, combined with Olivia's testimony and that of other witnesses who had come forward, painted a damning picture of corruption and violence. Testified today, one telegram from Olivia read. Sullivan looked old and defeated, defense brutal but I held firm, miss you desperately. Love, oh. After 6 weeks of testimony, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty on all counts. Edward Sullivan was sentenced to life imprisonment, his empire dismantled, his corrupt allies exposed and arrested. It's over, Olivia's final telegram announced. Leaving for home tomorrow, all my love, oh. Ryder rode to Copper Creek every day for a week, waiting for the train that would bring his wife home. When it finally arrived, he scanned the passengers desperately, his heart sinking when he didn't see her familiar figure. Then, just as he was about to leave, she appeared in the doorway of the last car, her face lighting up at the sight of him. Ryder pushed through the crowd, lifting her into his arms the moment she stepped onto the platform. "You're home," he breathed, holding her as if he'd never let go. "I'm home," she agreed, her arms tight around his neck. That night, in the privacy of their bedroom, Olivia shared the details of the trial that hadn't made it into her letters or telegrams, the vicious cross-examination, Sullivan's threats even from the defendant's table, the relief when the verdict was read. "It still doesn't feel real," she admitted. "That it's truly over, that I'm free." "It's real," Ryder assured her, his hand resting on her cheek. "And you're not just free, you're home." Spring came to the ranch, bringing new life and possibilities. The pastures turned green, calves were born, and wildflowers carpeted the hills. Ryder and Olivia settled into married life with a joy that made even the most ordinary days feel special. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia took Ryder's hand and placed it on her stomach. "I have news," she said, her eyes shining. "We're going to have a baby." Ryder's heart seemed to stop, then race ahead. "A baby, you're sure?" she nodded, laughing at his expression of wonder. "The doctor in Copper Creek confirmed it yesterday. By Christmas, we'll be a family of 3. Ryder pulled her into his arms, his joy too great for words. From the darkest moment of finding a stranger in his barn to this, a wife he adored, a child on the way, a future brighter than he'd ever dared to dream. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "Both of you." The months that followed were filled with preparations and anticipation. Ryder converted the small room adjacent to their bedroom into a nursery, crafting a cradle from pine with his own hands. Olivia sewed tiny garments and quilts, her practical nature now focused on creating a warm welcome for their child. Word came from Boston occasionally Sullivan's appeals had been denied. His former associates were facing their own trials, and the corruption he had fostered was being systematically rooted out. Each piece of news allowed Olivia to close that chapter of her life a little more firmly and focus on the future. On a snowy December night, with a howling blizzard rattling the windows of the ranch house, Olivia went into labor. The doctor couldn't make it through the storm, so Hank's wife, Martha, who had delivered half the babies in the county, took charge. After hours of labor, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby girl with a shock of dark hair like Ryder's and eyes that promised to be as blue as her mother's. "She's perfect," Ryder whispered, cradling his daughter with tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "What shall we name her?" Olivia, exhausted but radiant, touched the baby's tiny hand. "Catherine," she suggested, "after my friend." A reminder that even from great tragedy, something beautiful can emerge. "Catherine Blackwood," Ryder agreed. "It's perfect." As the years passed, the Blackwood ranch prospered. Ryder expanded his herd and his holdings, while Olivia started a small school for the children of neighboring ranchers. Little Catherine, or Cat as they called her, grew into a spirited girl with her father's love of the land and her mother's fierce sense of justice. 2 more children joined the family: James, born 2 years after Catherine, and Elizabeth, who arrived 3 years later. The house that had once felt so empty to Ryder now rang with laughter and occasional squabbles, with the chaotic joy of family life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryder took Olivia to the barn where he had found her that fateful night. He had transformed it for the occasion, hanging lanterns from the rafters and clearing a space for dancing. "Remember when I found you here?" he asked, holding her close as they swayed to the music of a phonograph he'd purchased for the occasion. "How could I forget?" She replied, her head resting against his chest. "I was terrified, exhausted, certain I'd made a terrible mistake in coming west. And now," Olivia looked up at him, her blue eyes as captivating as they had been that first night. "Now I know it was the best decision I ever made. Not because it led me to safety, but because it led me to you." Ryder kissed her then, still marveling at how this extraordinary woman had come into his life, just when he needed her most, how a desperate mail-order bride hiding in his barn had become the center of his world. "I love you, Olivia Blackwood," he murmured against her lips. "More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. And I love you," she replied. "My cowboy, my protector, my heart." Outside, the Montana sky spread vast and star-filled above their ranch, their home. The place where past and future had collided that fateful night, forging a love strong enough to weather any storm. And in the house nearby, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were part of a love story that had begun in danger but would continue in joy for all the years to come.